Hey everyone, it's Alice. So today I wanted to talk about something that was a little bit more serious and a little bit more personal to myself. So, as I mentioned in my previous video, I am a trans woman living in a rural part of Mississippi. Now, I want to discuss in my videos, my later videos, trans politics and trans issues and a lot of other things that are very important to myself. But I feel like to do that and to have that discussion, I would rather first share my personal story and how it is living as myself in this environment in an unsupporting family. Because I feel like for a lot of people, now of course, there are lots of very good YouTubers online discussing these issues. And there are a lot of very good trans YouTubers, such as Calvin Gara, Miss London, Storm Ryan, um, and a few others, of course, that cover these issues. But I feel like one of the more important parts to note about these people is that a lot of them are through their transition. They've gone through hormones, and that isn't to devalue their experience or their thoughts or anything to that degree. I feel like personally, for people who are not as far along in their transition or who are suffering through this unsupportive environment, who might be in a similar position, would want to hear a story or hear from the experience of somebody who might be going through something like they are. So, I, as somebody who is currently living completely closeted to my family, and who are going through a lot of hoops to sort of live the life as I want to, I could express my own story and narrative on how that's affecting me personally. So this is going to be a bit more of a serious video. There's going to be some pretty traumatic, um, and very disturbing even, I guess, sort of stories. This isn't scripted, so I'm a bit stammering through my words. So that's just if you get very easily disturbed or you think that might freak you out a bit, I would not recommend watching this. Um, I guess the best place to start would be at the beginning. When I was in second or third grade or something to that extent, I began feeling a bit off about myself. I knew from a very young age that I was in some ways uncomfortable, I guess, with my gender. It was never suffering for sure. I was never really, I guess, very disturbed by the fact that I was boy. I think it was more of a passive, well, if I could be a girl, I definitely would want to be a girl. And I grew up in a household with several sisters and several females. And I had always envied them in some way because all my friends in second, third, fourth, and now mostly are females. Um, and being around those people and seeing the sort of fundamental differences between them, it definitely bothered me a little bit as a child. Um, my school experiences, even young on, I noticed this. The more I started to hang out with people my age, the more when I started first going to elementary school, and notably, I guess, in third or fourth grade, I would always get very upset, um, in a uncomfortable sense when people would be separated into boy and girl groups because that's just what you do. You say, okay, well, we're playing dodgeball, kids. Like, this is the boy side, this is the girl side, and that would, on a very real level, upset me to some degree. I noticed that. And so I didn't really know why. I oftentimes would be like, well, why is this upsetting you so much? Because none of my friends seemed to have a problem with this. And I had, funnily enough, convinced myself, even at this young age, I had heard people talking about it. I always read a lot as a kid, so I kept up with I guess political issues, not like in a real sense, but just like I was a bit more well informed. I convinced myself that I was very passionate about sexism. Um, that I thought that I had this opinion that separating boy and girl groups at all in games and stuff was wrong and that you shouldn't do it. In reality, I really just wanted to be on the girls' side. I remember one day when we were playing a game, I would that the girl side was short, so obviously I volunteered. When I say short, I mean like there wasn't enough people on their side to make it even. So I got sent over, and I remember feeling absolutely wonderful about that. It brightened up my whole day. I love doing it. Bit of a tangent, but just to sort of give an idea of how I felt at a young age, because I know that a lot of people experience that same sort of uncomfortability. But moving on, when I moved to Mississippi, I was in Alabama for the majority of my formative years, but when I moved to Mississippi, I hit middle school and I hit puberty. And at this point, and I know that anybody who is trans or who is familiar with trans issues has heard the story a billion times, but when I hit puberty, I began experiencing some serious uncomfortability with not only my gender, but who I hung out with and the people that I hung around. And I actually experienced a very real form of dysphoria for the first time in my life. I hated the way that my body was changing. I hated looking at myself in the mirror. I actually began to lose a lot of friends because I couldn't stand to be around girls. They made me so angry and jealous that I just didn't want to be around them, to the point where I actually developed, embarrassingly enough, I was very misogynistic. Um, and then as time went on, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, of course, I cycled a lot between misogyny and misandry. Misandry? I didn't like boys. I did not like boys. And I couldn't stand to be around boys. And I sort of flip-flopped between these two, where when I was around girls, I always felt very jealous. One thing that really bothered me was sleepovers. Whenever my friends who were girls had sleepovers, I always felt so mad about that. And I convinced myself it was just I didn't like being excluded, like in general, but really it was only when the girls had sleepovers or did something that I wasn't allowed to do because of my gender that bothered me on a very, very, very real and serious level. I got upset because of that. So when I was around female friends, that very much disturbed me. But when I was around male friends, I hated being seen, I guess, in public with my male friends because I didn't like being grouped with them. Males, of course, in middle school are, this, of course, is not all males, but a lot of boys are just very immature. And I didn't like that immaturity. So again, I could excuse it away as, oh, you just don't like immaturity, you just don't want to be around boys and boys are immature. But that wasn't it. It was something about being grouped and seen as the same as these people that really fundamentally sort of bothered me. And in that way, I started to notice a bit of a correlation between how I felt about myself and what these feelings meant. So, I noticed at that age that I was attracted to boys and girls. I it took a lot to come to terms with this. I was never a very Christian or a religious person, despite the fact that a lot of my family were, but I never bought into it. But I guess I was unsure of myself at the time, so eventually I thought I was gay. Um, I I knew that I liked girls on some level, I guess, but the fact that I liked a boy, it just confused my little child brain. And I was like, oh, you like boys? So you're gay. And you must have just been confused when you thought you liked girls later. Because I had never really heard the term bisexual. I didn't know that you could like both, so I just assumed, oh, you like boys, you're gay. Um, so I came out to some friends about being gay, not trans. I didn't know what that was. And I told my friends, oh, I'm gay. This got out. I don't know who told who. So maybe somebody overheard me. I'm not sure. But eventually, that sort of idea of me being a homosexual person spread around my school. Now, I know that if you are living in a more liberal area, you might think, oh, why is that a big deal? Or it doesn't sound like. I lived in Mississippi. I still do live in Mississippi. And for those of you who have not ever lived in a very conservative or very Republican state, notably, you don't understand how big of a deal that is. That is unheard of. It's terrifying to be an openly out gay person in Mississippi. And I was bullied and I was harassed. In middle school, I was shoved, I was called names. And the names didn't really bother me. I didn't like being touched, of course, because who does? But I always was really thick-skinned, generally speaking. And this was tolling on me, not only because, duh, who wants to be bullied, but also because I didn't really feel a connection to being homosexual. I felt like there was something more. I still had these problems with my gender. I thought coming out would help me. I thought coming to terms with this would help me, but it didn't. And so I almost felt like I was suffering for the wrong reason. I was suffering for no reason. And I found eventually a girlfriend, or I found a girl who I was attracted to, and we talked, and we started dating. So these rumors of me being gay sort of dissipated, I guess, with me dating a girl. Um, and that's when, around that time when I started dating her, this was the beginning of 8th grade, I read online some story, I don't remember where I found it, some story about a trans person coming out to their family and being kicked out for it. And so when I heard trans, I'd heard the word before, but I didn't understand the difference between a transgender person and a drag queen. I thought they were the same thing. So when I read the story, I was like, that's a very weird thing to come out to your parents, being a drag queen and all. It seems like a very personal preference. Why would you tell people that? Or not really why would you tell people that, but like why would you come out as that, I guess. And then I looked it up. I looked up what is transgender. And when I read it, my heart sort of dropped. And a lot of people hear about or talk about coming out as trans or figuring out they're trans or reading about transgender people and feeling like relieved that they had found something that fit them. I was not. I was terrified. That scared the shit out of me because when I figured out that I was trans, when I read that, I knew immediately. I on some level, when I read about it, at that time at least, I was like, this is what I am. I know now what I've been dealing with my whole life. And I did not want to be trans. I did not want to deal with that. I was like, oh my god, you already came out as the gay kid. You're already being bullied for something that's a lot less weird than this. Why? Why are you like this? What happened? Why? And it was very conflicting, I guess, at the time to deal with that sort of thing. So I move into high school. I haven't really told any friends this. I've sort of just kept it to myself. I read about it. I've been on like major Reddit communities, I guess. I never post anything. But I read about it and I'm increasingly disturbed, I guess. This does not get better with time. I get more and more distraught over the fact that I am a trans individual. So I learned to ignore it to some degree. And when I enter high school, I am put into a gym class eventually with males, and this bothers me on such a fundamental level. But it turns out, genetically I guess, I'm very good at powerlifting. And so I start powerlifting. And the reason I do this, I figure out later on, is not because I particularly enjoy it, but because I am trying desperately, in some way, to make this not the case. I got praised for how good I was at the sport. I got praised for doing things that were inherently masculine. My family enjoyed it when I did things that were inherently masculine. So why would I be anything else? I substituted the love that I needed for myself with, how do I put this? The praise that I received from others substituted the love that I needed for myself and the appreciation and the like for myself. I didn't need to like myself as long as other people did it for me. So by becoming a powerlifter and becoming this impressive masculine figure, I was able to, in some ways, replace the need for needing to like myself, at least temporarily. This, over the course of about a year, really gets to me. I suffer through some serious mental issues alongside being transgender. And one day, I decide seriously that it's not worth it. Dealing with this and trying to push this back and being a transgender person with mental issues in a rural community that does not support me, living that life is not something that I am ever going to enjoy. And I am never going to like myself. and the praise that I get is never going to be based upon who I really am as a person. So I make the decision during this time, ninth grade, that I am going to take my own life. I make a plan, I tell my friend my plan, and I plan to do it the next day. My friend, being a good friend, freaks out. They tell my grandparents freak out. They don't tell them that it's because I'm trans. They only tell them about my plan. My grandparents assume it has to do with mental issues, which to some extent it did, like depression. And I am submitted to a mental hospital. I have to say, if you live in a rural area and you are submitted to a mental hospital or a mental institution of some sort, it is one of the most traumatizing experiences. Because in this hospital, I was strictly separated by my gender. I was not allowed to speak to girls. We were not allowed to interact with girls. We were not allowed to be on the same side of the basketball court when we were outside. If both groups were outside together, it was hellish. I hated every minute of it. But I didn't tell my therapist there that I was transgender, because if I told them that, my grandparents would find out, and that was not something that I could do. So throughout my time there, I stayed there for about a week. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And it was not like a sure fast diagnosis, but I was put on various medications, Prozac and Risperdal, and I am released. At this time, I think to myself, okay, this nearly killed you, and you have suffered through something that is terrible. You hated being there. I think legitimately, the only reason that I did not kill myself when I left was because the real world, being outside of this strictly separated mental hospital, made me better appreciate. I hated it so much that being in the real world seemed fine now. I begin to come out to friends. I come out to my girlfriend. I tell them my pronouns. I tell them what I like to be called, which is now, as you know, Alice. And my friends are very accepting. I have always been in the more liberal group. It's not hard to find these people. They stick out like sore thumbs. Where 90% of your high school is extremely conservative Republican, finding the odd ones out is not that difficult. So we were a very tightly knit group because of how different we were in this environment. My girlfriend, she's been my girlfriend now for about 2 years at this point. At this point, she's been my girlfriend for about 2 years. She does not take it well. She is not mean. She is not unaccepting. She personally feels like she cannot date a trans person. So we break up. And we get back together. And I say, I would like to advise everyone that is listening, do not do this under any circumstance. It is the worst decision I've ever made in my whole life. I told her, because I was in love with her, because I enjoyed being around her, because she was one of the only people that I was able to become close to, that if she couldn't date a trans person, then I wouldn't be trans. To me, having that one person in the world that I felt closest to was more important than validating my own identity. And so I thought, okay, well, you push this down in ninth grade, you can push it again. I didn't think to myself, oh, you pushing it down in ninth grade killed you almost. So I went back to my old pronouns. I went back to my dead name, and I tried my best to live a life as a male, as my assigned sex. This did not work again. I almost committed suicide again. I was resubmitted to the mental institution. Essentially, it was a repeat of what happened before. And I stay for a much shorter period. I come out of the mental hospital. I speak to my girlfriend about that I can't not be trans. So she agrees to stay with me. Later, she realizes that she, growing up in a very conservative household, was a bisexual person who could not come to terms with that part of her identity. So our relationship is fine on that front. It's all good. We're fine. She is currently an out and proud bisexual person. And this is now 10th grade. I am out to my friends. I'm going by Alice again, going by my pronouns. Again, this was literally a repeat of what happened before. I try to act like a boy. I get so depressed that I almost kill myself. And I come out and come to terms with my identity. Except this time, it actually does stick. Um, I'm in 10th grade now, and a very important event happens during this time. I'm sitting in theater class because, of course, I am, because I'm in the arts to some degree. I'm not even an arts person. I like programming, but of course, I was in a theater class and I enjoyed theater. I'm a tranny. What do you expect? It's LGBT thing. We're all in some kind of arts class. Ask anybody. It's gonna be band or it's gonna be theater or it's gonna be drawing. Um, but regardless, my friend comes into theater class and she's like super happy. She's freaking out. Um, and she says, "Oh my god, I got accepted into MSMS." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that sounds like a muscular disorder. What are you talking about? What is that?" And she says, "Oh, well, it is a school in Mississippi called the Mississippi School for Mathematics and Science." I don't actually know if I should be saying their name, but anyways, it's a public residential school with an undisclosed name. And she said that she got into it. So I say, "Oh my god, that's cool." And in my head, I'm kind of freaking out because I love math and science. Even then, when I was doing theater stuff, I was always a programming person. I loved coding, I loved math. And so this seemed like a perfect opportunity. And I was like, "What do you mean residential? Is it like a private school?" She's like, "No, again, it's a public school run by the state that you live at." And so I'm like, "Well, oh shit. Okay." So I go up to my little theater booth and I'm reading about the school all day. And it's fantastic. It's got these amazing classes. You live there, you go to a dorm, and I bring it up to my grandparents when I get home, and they're like, "Well, maybe, we'll see." Um, so my bad. I said this was 10th grade earlier. This is the end of ninth grade. My mistake, because you apply to the school in 10th grade and you're accepted during 11th, and you stay there 11th through 12th. So over the summer, I'm reading about the school. My friend is getting ready to go to the school. She's a year above me, of course. And my grandmother said something that's really unexpected. Now, of course, this seemed like a pipe dream to me. I'd never expected to go to this school. Well, I went to the school, obviously, but I never expected to. And she says, "Okay, well, let's tour the school that you want to go to." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So we drive up there. It's a 5 hour drive. And she says, "We're going to look at the school. We're going to see what it's like." And it's amazing. It's got great facilities. It's got great teachers, great classes. It's just a fantastic place. If you have children in Mississippi, I absolutely 100% recommend going to the school. It's an amazing place. It's got amazing opportunities. Anyways, I fell in love with the place, as you can see, the first time I went there. And I start applying in August of my 10th grade year. I go through the whole year applying. At this point, I am still out as trans. This is an important part of the story, the MSMS thing. I'm not just throwing that in there for shits and giggles. Um, I apply to the school. I'm talking to my friend who's up there the whole time. And what I learn about this place is that not only is it just an amazing facility, it is an extremely liberal environment, as in the majority of the students that go there are very liberal people. This is unheard of in Mississippi. I can't stress that enough. If you don't live here, you won't get it fully, but I cannot get that across to you enough. So much as 20% liberal leaning population in a school would be an insanely high amount. It is the Bible Belt. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. That's literally what people call it. So when I heard about this, I was like, "Well, what do you mean? How liberal is it?" And it's like, "Oh, well, they've got a GSA. They've got it's so many people are LGBT out in the open. Teachers will call you by your preferred pronouns. They'll call you by whatever name you've decided on." That is insane to me. And so this only drives me further to want to apply to this school and be a part of this school, be a part of this place. So I'm applying the whole year. My girlfriend at the time is applying the whole year, and we're waiting just anxiously on whether we're getting accepted to the school. One of our big fears was that one of us would get accepted and the other wouldn't. It's a 5 hour drive. That's insane. We both get accepted. This is one of the happiest moments of my life. I am overjoyed. And I am put in touch by that friend, the theater friend who told me about the place, with another girl that she's friends with. I won't mention this person's name, but you know who you are. We'll just call her, I don't know, let's call her Jackie. So Jackie is a friend of my mutual friend. Wait, no. Jackie is a mutual friend of my friend who told me about MSMS to begin with. And we start talking over the summer. We start speaking and getting to know each other. And this person is being so nice and so friendly. And they're saying, okay, well, when you get up there, we're going to teach you how to do makeup. I'll do your makeup every morning if you want. We're going to get you in a place where you can be yourself. I am thrilled. This is the summer before MSMS, and I am freaking out. I am so happy. I am waiting for the days to go by. I have a counter on my phone that marks when school starts. And so the more I get to know this person is still one of my best friends to this day. She's amazing. She's living in Chicago at the moment with her girlfriend. She's fantastic. I love her. But we do get to the school. I start my first day, and I sort of grasp what they mean by a liberal space. Again, most of the people there are liberal. Of course, you have the outliers who are like crazy conservative people or just middle-leaning people or super liberal people. Like, but most of them are your normal, everyday, rational, liberal Americans. You know, just run of the mill. So I go there, and I am immediately accepted by people. I am able to talk to people about my pronouns and my name, and I can't, I'm tearing, I'm sorry. I can't get you to comprehend how much that meant to me in a very real and emotional way. It finally felt like I had found a place that I could be myself and that I could express myself. It felt like, this is a good way to put it, it felt like that all those years of fighting and going through weeks of crying and not being able to look in the mirror, they were worth something. That it had been leading up to this. That in some way, that suffering meant something. That I was alive so I could experience this, that it was going to get better. And that had never happened to me before. That feeling that you're not doing this for nothing, the futility of it wasn't there. I had fought for this, and I got it. And if you haven't been through something like that, you don't understand how amazing that feeling is. One of the things that really shocked me about the place was that the teachers, the administration, and the various other facilities there were very accepting and loving of myself and of students like me, with calling them by their appropriate names and genders and pronouns and things such as that. And that level, because I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that if you're a person and you tell your friend something or you tell like others something and like that are close to you, that your name is this and that you go by this and they call you that, that's very amazing. That's a good feeling for sure. I'm not trying to discount that sort of acceptance by your friends. That's the first step. But to be accepted by other people that you don't know, that you've never met, by teachers and people in a position of power at the school, that adds a whole new level of amazingness to it, I guess is the only way to put it. It makes it feel real. It makes it feel like you're not just playing pretend and dressing up or asking your friends to do something. It makes it feel like this is real. This is who I am. This is not a joke or a game or dress up. On the topic of dress up, so despite my powerlifting, I'm not actually that big of a person. I'm very short, which is good. That's a very good thing. I'm actually 5'4.5". Both my parents are short. And I have a rather round and feminine face. I have curves. My abdomen is pretty small, but I have like hips and thighs, and I have a rather feminine figure. I am lucky enough to have that at my disposal. So one thing that I noticed was that if I dressed up in girl clothes, which I did, and if I put on makeup, and if I put on a voice, that to the general public, I passed. And I was called she and her, and ma'am and miss, and all these other things that I had never been called before that were so fantastic. I don't know if this is just me or if this is a trans thing, but if you get called like a term that you've never heard before, like she and her are one thing, right? Everybody says she and her. So after a while, that's amazing, and it's amazing every time, but it gets less amazing over time. Like the first time is always the best. But like new words that you never thought of, like miss and ma'am and other things that like denote that gender, they give you like this really nice feeling. And being called those were just amazing. And I got called them in public. Um, One story that I'll probably elaborate on in another video is that I was nervous that people were just doing it out of politeness. So one of my test runs, I guess is what I called them, is I asked my friend, "You go to Baptist church, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so I was like, "Well, do they separate the Sunday schools by gender by chance?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, of course they do." And I was like, "I want to go to one." Now, I'm not religious, but I figured if there was any group of people that were going to be like, "Get the fuck out, tranny," it would be the Baptist church. And so it's not an insult to people who are Baptist. It's just generally that community, especially in the South rural, super conservative areas, do not tend to be very accepting. So I went and I got sorted into the girl Sunday school group, and I'm not religious. I don't even like religion. I certainly don't like super conservative Baptists, but that was fantastic. That was one of the best days. Um, Anywho, that was a tangent. But just saying that I didn't just experience life as a trans girl. I got to experience life as a girl because I am lucky enough to have a feminine looking face and body and pass. And that was just amazing. One of the things that I would like to touch on, what this video is about, essentially, what the title is about, was that I am doing all of these things in complete secret. I could not tell my grandparents, obviously. So what I would do was I would say, every time my grandparents were coming, I would go to the people in my hall in the dorm that I lived in, and I'd say, "Okay, my grandparents come up here, you call me my dead name. You say he, him. You do not in any, actually, you know what, just don't talk to me. Just don't speak to me, if you can help. If you can help it, just don't talk to me in any way. Let them think that I am a friendless shrew, that never speaks to people." And that they did. I would take all my girl clothes in my closet and I'd put them in a little box and I'd put it at the top shelf in my roommate's closet. Like, I had this shit on lock. I was MSMS's best open secret. My teachers were in on it. The administration was in on it. They would switch names. They would switch pronouns. Anytime my grandparents talked about me, they would say my dead name and he and him, and everybody would respond accordingly, which I'm still impressed with, in all honesty, that was able to be kept up for the full 9 months that I was there. I mean, granted, they didn't come often and we didn't interact that often, but even so, you'd think somebody would slip up, but they didn't. And so I had this complex system in place for where to put my makeup and where to put my clothes and everything like that. It was fantastic. I had the shit on lock. I was getting it. I was living the secret trans life. I would go out and buy girl clothes with the money that my grandparents would give me, and I would write fake little grocery lists, so if they ever asked what I bought, which they did, I would have like a full list of things, price by price, of what exactly I bought. And I had gifts from friends with makeup because I had an amazing group of friends. That was probably the best part about this, was that I had friends that were accepting and helped me out and showed me how to do makeup and showed me what I should do. And I lived the best life at MSMS my first year there. Currently, it's the summer after my first year there. Just a moment. My ear itched under my headphones. But I lived my best life there, and I'm in the summer after my first year there. I'll be starting up again in August. And the thing about it, right, is that I don't know if I should touch on this at all, really, just because I will. But near the end of the year, when things were wrapping up, we had exams, we had finals, we had this, that, and the other, and it was a very stressful time for me, I guess, overall, just because MSMS is not just some school, it's I think the sixth best public high school in the whole nation, rated on like niche or something. But it's hard. There's a lot of hard work. It's not just like trainy kumbaya songs and LGBT celebrations and pride parades, right? It's a hard school. And it's it was taking a toll on me, and it was taking a toll on my relationship. And recently, my the girlfriend that I mentioned before, who at that time, or about a month ago, had been with me for 4 years, broke up with me. We did not end on good terms, though right now we're not mad at each other. It's not, for undisclosed reasons, it ended in a very, very bad way. And it broke me in a very emotional level. And at the moment, it's one of the worst times of my life. That's sort of why I'm making this channel. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's a catalog for how life is going. It keeps me sane. I know that not many people watch this. I know that not many people are going to watch this. But to me, keeping track and putting it all down somewhere is helpful. And if I'm going to speak on issues in the trans community, if I'm going to speak on how hard it is being trans and do things like that, I need to make it clear to people that I'm not just talking out of my ass, that I have experienced this and this has been my life. Currently, good news, things are looking up, I guess, is that my uncle, my dad's brother, is gay. That's not the good news, but he's always been gay. And he does know. I didn't mention him, but I've kept him updated about this whole thing the whole time it's been happening. He's known ever since I knew, or he's known about 2 years after I knew. And he is flying me up to New York City this summer, probably here in about a week or so, and we're going to go to trans youth groups, which is something that I have no idea what it's like. I've never been to a trans youth group. I've never been to any LGBT youth group, obviously. But I'm excited, and I hope it goes well. Another thing this summer is that one of the questions that people ask me a lot when I tell them the story is, okay, so you're living at your grandparents' house and you had to move all your stuff out and you had to get out of the dorms. Where's all the girl stuff that you were talking about before? That's a very good question, hypothetical question asker. It's in a box. It's in a cardboard box. I took all of my makeup and all of my clothes and everything I owned that was at all feminine, and I put it in a box. And I gave it to a friend of mine. And I was like, hey, friend of mine who lives semi-close to me, can you keep my stuff in a box until we go back? Because I need that stuff somewhere and I cannot bring it to my house. And anyway, can you please keep it for me? Because that'd be really nice. And then I can go get it if I need it. And she was like, yeah, of course, we have room in our car. And I was like, okay, thank you, friend of mine. Okay, I'm mocking her because I think she's going to watch this. But she's a fantastic individual. I don't know how I would have kept sane throughout this whole time without her. She's done so much for me, and right now my girl clothes are in a box at her house. If you are watching this, friend of mine, thank you so much for everything you've done. You have no idea the mental stress you have taken off of me by doing what you did. And yeah, I don't actually know how long this has been going on. I don't have a timer, like that I can see, but presumably this has gotten really long. My grandparents still don't know. I have no plans to tell them. I'm seeing a therapist at the moment, but my therapist is not trans friendly in any way. That's a whole other video. I want to stop seeing him, but I'm sort of trapped in the situation. It's a long story that I won't get into right now, but maybe later. I wouldn't say I'm enjoying life, but it's looking up. my identity is currently not existent as a girl. I'm going by my dead name this whole summer. I'm dressing up as a boy essentially this whole summer. I sometimes go over to that friend's house and I dress up as a girl, and we went out to the mall and it was a whole thing and it was fun. But for the overwhelming majority of the time, I'm just a boy at the moment. Um, and that sucks. And to all of those of you who are in that situation, or maybe might be in that situation or something similar, I understand how hard it is. I do. I get it's hell. It's terrible, right? But it does get better. And it is about those little things, the small victories, the changing your hair maybe, or working within the bounds of what your parents or whatever will allow you to do, or being slightly more feminine or slightly more masculine. You will get there. You will be able to be yourself someday. At the time, I thought that I was going to die a boy, but I didn't. And I do get to express myself. And I do like looking how I look when I do express myself like that. I don't like how I look right now. Right now I look like a dude. But it does get better. And you will get to look how you want. And I can't speak on the passing of everyone, obviously, because I don't know all of you, or I don't know the people that might be watching this. But it will get better than it is right now. It always does. Even if it doesn't seem like that sometimes. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was long and I was rambling, but I do hope that you took something away from this video and that you better understand what kind of position I'm in at the moment, and that in my later videos you can look back on this and know that I'm speaking from a position of somebody who has gone through a lot of that, and that this story maybe even helps somebody get through their own problems. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, props to these two guys, or whoever's been playing, because they have kept you guys very much entertained. None of these are my games. Bye.